Hey everybody, it's Gavin Newsom, and I am very excited that just in a moment I'm going to be joined or be joining Megan Rapinoe, California's own, Redding, California to be exact, for a conversation about COVID-19, conversation on how you can get involved with a new initiative, Californians for All.ca.gov, to volunteer and support your community, share your passion, find something you're good at, care about, and you want to contribute. We'll match that up with this new platform we just put together. And there she is. Hey, Megan.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I am very well. Where are you? What part of the globe are you?
Yeah. Unfortunately, not in California at the moment. Most of my family is still out there. I think all my family is actually in California. I'm out in Connecticut right now. The way it sort of shook out, I spent most of my time in Seattle, but Sue and I were on the East Coast when it all kind of went down. And so we just stayed out here and have been basically in this apartment the entire time.
The entire time. So you are practicing. You're not preaching. You're doing the social distancing.
Oh.
And when you go out, you're
I'm practicing, I'm preaching, I'm yelling about it, I'm lecturing, I'm trying not to lecture, I'm doing everything I can to get people to just stay inside if they can, and obviously if they can't, then to practice all of the necessary precautions.
And how are you going? Like so many other millions of Americans, you get a little, cabin fever. You feeling like I can't keep doing this for very long.
A little bit. Actually, I feel pretty lucky because Sue was in Seattle when the Kirkland nursing home incident broke out and that sort of outbreak. So, kind of like immediately, she was in Seattle. And so she was relaying this information to me and she was like, it's real. She was joking that some of her friends were calling her Paul Revere as she was coming across the country. She went to Massachusetts and then settled here in Connecticut. But very early on, I was like, no, this is not something to be taken lightly. But it has been a long time. It's frustrating. I miss things. I want to go out. I don't want to wear a mask. Like the masks are really annoying, especially the cloth ones are kind of suffocating. I don't want to wear it to the grocery store, but I just keep watching the news and seeing, all the essential workers and the healthcare workers and people who are getting sick too. And I'm like, if the worst thing that I have to deal with is being bored in my apartment, then I'll try to take that as a win for sure.
No, that's the right perspective. What do you do? I mean, just it's one thing we could talk about mental health, which is a big part of the challenge, right? To
Yeah.
stay home, but also just physical health. How are you able to get exercise and really keep in shape?
Very creative. We've had to get very creative for sure. We've turned like our little sort of dining room into a pseudo studio. So we have some, kettlebells and bands and stuff like that. We did get a Peloton. Very thankful for that. And running on the street a little bit. And then we found this like one swath of grass that hasn't been shut down yet that we're able to kind of get out on, which I'm super thankful for. I think the working out helps with the mental health as well. Just not sort of staying in the same exact spot or the same sort of mental space all day. We have to kind of get out and do different things and keep ourselves active in that way.
We love saying about the state. It's important that you stay at home, but you're not alone, and
Yeah.
and make sure you reach out to folks and just check in, and then ask for folks to reach out to you and check in on how you're doing. Do you have
Yeah.
any? I'm just curious. Do you have any rituals? Anything you're doing that sort of habituate sort of connection to your friends and family on a consistent basis?
Yeah, a lot of FaceTiming, a lot of Zooming, a lot of Instagram living. We have a couple like standing dates, sort of friend dates and family kind of catch ups every week. We have a Sunday brunch that we're getting involved in to kind of just, keep people. So it's like, this is sort of what we do anyways. Like we like to hang out and relax and we want to go to restaurants and we want to do all these things. And you have to adapt a little bit, but the essence, I think, can still be there. You still have that connection with other people and you're talking with them and sharing stories about your week or whatever it may be. It kind of just breaks up the monotony a little bit, but we're keeping connected with people for sure.
So what do you? I mean, there's one thing you miss more than anything else about the way things were just even a few months ago, and you can't wait to get back to. What is it?
I think honestly it has to be restaurants and going to dinner. The whole process around going to dinner, the cocktail before, you go to dinner, you meet friends, you haven't seen them in a minute. You know, in California, you have at your fingertips some of the best food in the world and every different kind. It's that part of it I really miss. I don't have a ton of like, I'm not a big like outdoors hiking kind of person. I don't have a lot of time for different hobbies, but I have to eat every day. So that's something that I miss.
love it's so interesting, but it is interesting, right? Restaurants. I mean, how we kind of take it for granted, so many choices, and you know,
Yeah.
now they're in so. If there's any industry that's vulnerable, it's the restaurant industry, and of course, these massive layoffs disproportionately impacting low-wage workers, minimum wage workers, tipped workers, and that's a big issue of why we love you so much. Also impacting women and girls differently, and your frame and focus and support on gender equality. And so I just want to compliment you on that. But also, there's someone else here who's passionate in that space who also wants to compliment you.
Hi, Megan.
That's my
Hi.
How are you?
wife.
I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
This is not the first lady, it's the first partner of California. So
There we
I
go.
can't do anything without Jen sharing the moment.
And well,
I
a huge
love it.
soccer fan and a huge fan of yours for all you've done for equal pay. So
Oh,
thank you so much for inspiring future generations of young girls in particular with your incredible leadership and advocacy and strong, powerful voice.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's very sweet. Yeah, we're doing all we can. Make it better.
Megan, she claims she was a soccer player in the day, but you know, I don't know. I haven't seen much of it. But she was in the junior national team at Stanford, so she's like legit back in the day.
Oh, okay. Well, when Governor lifts all of the restrictions, we'll have to play a game.
We would love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could teach them some skills. We play a little bit in our backyard with our kids, and they like.
Yeah.
They're taking them on
Baseball,
all the time.
guys, baseball.
Okay,
Yeah, good
okay.
luck. Baseball, that's my thing.
But we love that you're from this area too, with Elk Grove soccer clubs, and I mean it's awesome. We really want you to come back, so we hope that we can invite you and the team back to Sacramento and come join us in the mansion when the restrictions are lifted.
We would love to. We would love to. Absolutely. There's a bunch of us from California. Most of them I think are from Southern California, but I hold down the North State pretty well, I think. So definitely the way North State.
Yeah.
And by the way, and I want to take advantage just of our short time together, but to ask you, I mean, how are people feeling up? And as you say, we talk about Northern California. Folks in San Francisco think they're Northern California, but there's Northern California,
exactly.
and often forgotten. And so how are people feeling about this in your old hometown and the folks up north that often feel forgotten, even in the best of times?
Yeah. I'm so happy you brought that up. I mean, I think you're kind of seeing it across the country. People are getting a little bit antsy. But I feel like because we've sort of, try to put this nicely, lacked a coherent national strategy across the board, we've sort of been getting these like nuggets of hope. Like, okay, we're going to shut down for a couple weeks and then that'll be the end of it. And then we extend it and then that'll be the end of it. So I feel like that's sort of making people a little bit stir crazy in a sense. But I think, I mean, credit to you and of course your team around you for shutting the state down so early, because I think everybody, you know, saw this coming and everybody immediately looked at California. Obviously being on the West Coast with this proximity to China and just the flights going in and out, everybody I think was like, this is going to happen. And then New York happened and that kind of blew up, and California's kind of stayed under the radar. I mean, I'm sure in the moment, you know, in hindsight, of course, you look like a genius. In the moment, that had to be a really difficult decision for you to make. But I think people are getting stir crazy. So I guess my question for you is what can we tell them about, you know, this sort of second wave coming, or how important it is to keep flattening the curve? Because flattening the curve doesn't mean we have zero. We still means we have a lot. It's been, you know, one of the deadliest days in California yesterday. So while people are getting, I think, antsy, and particularly I think in the smaller towns and the more rural towns, you know, that's where my family's from, up in Redding in Northern California. I think it hasn't quite hit there the way it's hit in cities. And so what can you say to them and sort of reassure them that this is the right path that we're plotting, as not only as California, but as country?
Yeah, no, well, I love the frame of your question. And look, and I appreciate we were very blessed to be the first state to move forward with a stay-at-home order, but blessed in this respect. It's one thing to say, it's another to do. And when you have 40 million people, I mean,
Yeah.
this is the fifth largest economy on planet Earth, and 40 million people with all the diversity of the state, and they really met the moment.
They did it. They did
practiced
it.
physical distancing. And so in some ways, we kind of take the work for granted because, as you said, there was never this peak, there was never this overwhelming curve. We were able to flatten it from the get-go. And the
Yeah.
key now is not to run the 90-yard dash. You know, we're so close to sort of really turning the page. And there's this at just the moment where people are saying, I can't, it's a beautiful weekend, the beaches, they're
Yeah.
calling me, these parks and playgrounds. And so we really can't impress upon people more, gratitude for doing the right thing, not only for themselves, but for their community and for the state and each other. But all we ask is to go out of this the way we came in it, and that's
Yeah.
together. And so we're trying to keep rural California, urban California. We don't care about your politics. We don't care who you're promoting or supporting in the next election. We care about your health. We care about your kids, your grandkids. We care about your parents, your grandparents. And we want to make sure we're there for every community in the state.
Yeah. Is there, when you're sort of looking, I'm sure you're going through the process of, looking at reopening or what that would even look like, projections and models. Is there a difference between rural areas and cities, or because it's so transmissible and people are traveling and driving and going on over the place, is there really a difference between the bigger cities and the smaller towns and rural areas when it comes to mitigating the spread of this virus?
I think there is, but let's not forget, one of the things I'm really proud of, you saw it on the East Coast, you've seen it now in the middle part of the country, and obviously on the West Coast, is governors starting to work together regionally, even as different states. I mean, the entire West Coast, this block from Oregon, Washington, and California, because to your point, the virus knows no boundaries. It doesn't know jurisdiction.
Right.
But that also persists and exists within our state, because this population of California is larger than 21 states combined.
Yeah.
And so we talk about
It's a nation
California,
in and of its own.
yeah, it's just
It really is.
And as you say, it's very different. I mean, the rural parts of the state, southern, the Central Coast, Central Valley, being very different than some of the larger urban centers. And so the answer is yes. We have to tailor our strategies bottom up as we collaborate regionally across states. We also want to collaborate within the state on a regional basis, community by community, so that we can mitigate the spread from one city, one town to the next, and make sure that, again, we're always driven by one thing, public health and people's safety, and not by politics and not by protest. As much as I respect, and I really do respect protest, and I want people to express themselves, I also want them to be safe. I want them to be healthy. And it's going to be data that ultimately determines the when we start to pull back. But the good news is, honestly, Megan, we're seeing a lot of positive signs. Hospitalization numbers went down today. ICU numbers went down today. The death rate is lagging, and it was tragic, 115 souls lost their lives. But we're starting to see real stability over a period of time, and that's a point of optimism. So it's not a permanent state. We're going to come back. And I don't think this, I'm a former San Francisco mayor, and our flag is the phoenix, because the phoenix rose after the ashes of the earthquake, and we are stronger, more vibrant than I know we will rise more vibrant, more capable, more compassionate, more purposeful, more equitable into the future. It's just we got to get through these next few months together.
Megan, did you follow what we're doing with Cal Volunteers and Californians for All? I don't know if you're seeing it across the country, but
Tell me.
I'm really proud of in California, where more and more folks, from neighbors to folks in various communities across the state, are volunteering. They're volunteering in the health corps, they're volunteering in education, they're bringing food to seniors. There are so many acts of volunteerism that's really an embodiment of California spirit and recognition that we're in this together. And it's felt really good. And we also are trying to close the digital divide. We just allocated 70,000 gifted.
I love that from the state level as well. I mean, obviously we've seen a lot about the stimulus packages that have come out. More are continuing to come out. Hopefully a lot more relief for true small businesses. We saw in the first relief package, a lot of those bigger loans went to some bigger corporations. In terms of the state level, obviously we have, unemployment and, there was a stimulus. I love the idea of coming together. We have an incredibly diverse state in just about every single aspect that you could possibly imagine, from the landscape to the demographics. One group that was left out of essentially all of this stimulus package was the undocumented workers. And we have a lot in California. And it's something that makes our state great, in my opinion. I don't know if everybody would say that, but I think it makes it great. It makes us diverse, and it's also a huge portion of our workforce. So you in California, we have, I think it's 75 million from the state of California and 75 million from private donors. In terms of not just for the undocumented people, but going forward, what is the state of California able to do to help people through this time, or is that more of a federal government thing, or how are we looking at from a long-term perspective?
I love this. I love the question. I love the spirit of the question. And let me sort of unpack it. Megan, you grew up in a state where 27% of us are foreign born. 27%. Most diverse state in the world's most diverse democracy. It's what makes California great. It really does. Our ability to live and advance together across every conceivable difference. We have roughly 2 million people here without documentation, but I'll tell you what, they're the backbone of our essential services. You look at the sectors of our economy we deem essential, primarily in the food sector, logistics sector, and the warehouse sector, that's overly represented by these workers, and they're literally saving our lives. They're feeding us. They're taking care of us. And you know what? You're right. Now, $1 in the federal stimulus to help them and their families that are in many cases in mixed status families where one or more members are here with documentation, but one or two may not be. And so we put up this fund, and you're right, philanthropy stepped up, the Green Pal Jobs, the Zuckerberg Foundation, some folks that put their name out on this. And I bring them up only because, you know what? A lot of people give in this space, but they do it anonymously because they know there's a lot of anxiety and antipathy in this space. And you know what? I'm proud. I was mayor of San Francisco, first city in America to do universal health care, regardless of your immigration status. And I'm proud that last year we were able to make more health care open opportunities, regardless of immigration status, for everyone up to the age of 26. No state in the country does that. And it's just an example of us wanting to help everybody and not sitting here moralizing these issues. Sure as heck aren't politicizing these issues. And I deeply appreciate your recognition for those folks. And we're going to try to do our best. It's a drop in the bucket, even the 75 million we put up. We have to do more. But I hope people can start to develop a little more compassion and understanding of who's, taking care of mom and dad at the senior facility. Who's quite literally out there building our affordable housing, who's not just the folks picking food, but making food, delivering food, and just consider that the contributions of innovation are predominantly in California, people that came here that are foreign born, and start to recognize our common humanity in a different way. And so I love that about you. I love it about the majority of our state. And those that haven't gotten it yet, I'm going to look forward to loving them soon.
Yeah.
Megan, it's sort of an interesting segue into obviously thinking about an issue that you've been fighting for with equal pay, and I know you have a case coming up on May 5th. Are you feeling optimistic? And I just bring this up in lieu of the fact that aside from the immigrant community, we think about women and women of color tend to be in the care economy and on the front lines right now in large numbers. And so you combine these various communities, immigrants, women, in particular women of color, they're suffering the most, will be suffering the most. They were already undervalued and underpaid. So your fight is symbolic and critical. Are you optimistic in terms of what you will be able to accomplish, your team, your partners will be able to accomplish, in that women should be valued for their equitable, and I would say in your case, greater contribution?
Thank you for that. I am very optimistic, to be honest. I'm really optimistic. I think, as this case is kind of unfolded, yes, it's about us. We've had, discrimination against us and the team over a number of years, but this case has become so much bigger than that. And I think to tie it to this moment, I think that the interesting part in this moment is that people who have traditionally been undervalued because people don't see them as having as much value, now they're the essential workers. Now they're literally the people who we can't live without. So many of us have been rendered, so many important people have been rendered, completely mute and just completely, utterly useless in this time other than staying home. And now, we're talking about, it's not just, that people were undervalued, but people actually saw that they didn't have a lot of value. So they didn't pay them very much, or we don't have protections for them. And now we're seeing all these, workers, a lot of which are women, a lot of which are women of color, a lot of which are undocumented women. And so I think hopefully this can be a wake-up call for everyone of just how really important every aspect of society is. And not to say that everybody has to make the same and, everybody, has to be in the same exact job, but there should be a baseline of appreciation and value. And not just in the hey, I value you. Like, if I really value you, I need you to have healthcare. I need you to have a living wage. I need you to have housing. I need you to have these basic needs. So kind of tying it back to the lawsuit, we're super optimistic. We feel like we have a great case, and we have so much support behind us from so many other women in other industries. And, as you always say, I think meeting the moment and being your best in that moment, I think is really important, and hopefully the team can step up and do that along with our legal team and everybody. I think we're going to win. Whether that's a settlement or in trial. I mean, no one ever really wants to go to trial, but I think that we have a great opportunity to make a bigger statement about treating people fairly and valuing people in this time, for sure.
We'll be cheering you on. Thank you.
We did a little small part with Maverick Surf Contest, where we said you don't get to even do this surf contest in California unless you pay equivalent support for the winners, both female and men. Yeah. So anyway, we're gonna, as states, I think we can also push this thing a heck of a lot more than it has been as well.
Yeah,
Valuing women's
I
work,
think so too.
valuing women's contributions. Right on.
Yeah. So
Megan,
okay,
one
as
thing
we
that I would
wrap
love
up,
folks-
what's the next step for people in California? What's going to be the next thing that we all need to come together to do? I think California, interestingly enough, is sort of used to these, unfortunately we have a natural disaster in California almost every year, whether it's mudslides or forest fires or earthquakes or whatever it is. We're sort of used to rallying together and kind of having that sort of spirit. What's next for our rallying cry as a state, and how do we move forward from here?
It's interesting you say it in those terms. I mean, these wildfires we've had in the last few years, some of the worst in our history. And for anyone that doesn't believe in climate change and you think it's pseudoscience, come out to California if you want to experience climate change. The hots are getting hotter, the dries are getting drier, the wets are getting wetter, and that has certainly impacted all of us in the state, particularly rural California, that's been disproportionately impacted by these historic wildfires. But your point, the spirit of that also attaches this commonality and connected nature, where we recognize there's no jurisdiction or no leak on your side of our boat when it comes to the issue of mutual aid and working together. And so I think it's what captured with our stay-at-home order the imagination of so many Californians that really did want to meet, forgive me, that moment. And so when we look forward, the key is that we again maintain that spirit of community coming out of this. And so I'm hopeful in the next days, not just weeks, certainly months, that we'll begin to toggle back on our stay-at-home order in a very deliberative and very focused way. We put out 6 specific indicators. The indicators will determine the when, not a date. We don't debate dates. That's not in our lexicon. It's what the indicators say. And so we were able to make some adjustments in our hospital systems yesterday, and so we pulled back. And we're going to start looking at every region and look within the region at unique conditions and then begin to do the same thing. So from my perspective, I think it's kind of an optimistic moment. We're kind of at an inflection point. The problem, again, will occur only if we overcompensate. And then we see this massive second wave that overwhelms us because we were lulled to sleep thinking this virus was tamed, when in fact it won't be tamed until herd immunity and or a vaccine.
Is testing going to be something that we'll have the availability for in California? I know that this is a major issue, something very difficult, and there's so many aspects that go into it, from the manufacturing to the labs to all of it. Is that something that California is going to be able to do, or is that more of a coming down from the federal level and then each state is sort of figuring it out?
We need all the help we can get from the federal level, from international supply chains, quite literally international supply chains for swabs, the media, the tubes, the RNA extraction kits, the reagents, all this new language that all of us have learned in real time. The idea that the swabs become the biggest impediment to growing testing is infuriating. It's interesting. Most of those are manufactured in Italy. Of course, it's been ravaged as well. Those are the PCR tests, the traditional tests we're all talking about. We're now moving to these blood-based tests, the serology tests. Here's the good news in California. We went from an average 2,000 tests a day. Now we're up to 16,000, on our way to 25,000 every day. And then I just announced yesterday our goal to 60 to 80,000 within the next number of weeks. So we're seeing a real increase in our capacity to test supplies. And then these serology tests allow us to do what we call serosurveillance. Complicated way of saying just community surveillance, where we randomly test people that are asymptomatic, so we get a real sense of the spread. And so it's the right question to ask in relationship to your previous question is, we'll go back to some semblance of normalcy. The more tests we do, the more we trace the virus, and the more we track individual contacts that actually have come into contact with the disease, so that we can isolate people, quarantine them. And so it's complicated. At the same time, we've been doing it for TB. We've been doing that for measles. We've been doing that for STDs. We've been doing that for HIV and AIDS. So we actually have the protocols in place. So for what sounds confusing is really a question only of scale, not capacity.
Got it. Okay. So it's going to be a combination of about 1,001 different things, putting it all together from the testing to the easing out of stay at home. But I mean, I think for people to understand that, I've been saying this, I feel like, everybody's like antsy and wants to get out. Like, there's nobody that wants everybody out more than elected officials. I feel like everybody's like, I want to be out so bad. And I'm like, the elected officials want you out more. They want you out working and happy and not sitting in your home watching every piece of news. But surely it'll be a slow process stepping out. But thank you for the amazing job that you've done for the state of California, and hopefully, being a beacon for other states in the country as well. As I said before, I think everybody was bracing themselves for some really terrible news out of California, and it's still terrible, but it's been kept, sort of at bay. So we're all very thankful for your work and your team's work in trying to handle this unprecedented time. This is once in a multi-generation kind of thing that you're having to deal with.
It better be, because we can't do this. Right?
How are you holding up? Are you okay? Like, personally, are you guys doing okay? You're hanging in there?
We got 4 kids under
we have 4
10.
little ones.
So
one was asking
my
about
goodness.
you today. He's like, "Why are you dressed up, mommy?" And instead of in my sweats, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Well, I'm gonna go say hi to Megan." And he was very excited. He loves soccer.
Each time I said hi, for sure.
They're they want to see their friends. They want to be with their friends. They are missing that social component big time.
Definitely.
And I feel for everyone that's in, we're in it together. Everyone's struggling. Everyone's, and we empathize tremendously, and we're right there with everyone. We want things to get back to normal too.
yeah.
So
But in the interim, and by the way, just because I just want to take advantage of this opportunity, I know so many people watching have student debt, Megan. California, we just announced there's a 90-day forbearance, meaning you don't have to pay student debt for the next 90 days. No fines, no fees, no penalties, no impact on your credit rating. I know it's only 90 days, but at least it's a little bit of relief. We did the same for mortgages. We're just, in every way, just trying to ease the stress of people at this moment as we ease into reopening, and then deal with the economic damage that's been done and try to help rebuild families, rebuild lives.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we're very appreciative of all your work. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. I'm a budding journalist, apparently.
Apparently
you're
you
good
sound
at
like
it.
it.
You're
Well
good
done.
at it.
Well done. See, I'm buttoning my jacket when you say
I know.
Out of
I
respect.
button my jean jacket. I probably have to wear something more professional than this if I
No,
was
you
a
look great.
journalist. But
Good.
Keep using your voice. Thanks for your leadership. Really.
of course.
Great to be with you,
Of
Meg.
course. Stay
Take
strong,
care.
California.
Yep. Can't wait to see you back out here. Bye.
All right. Likewise. Bye-bye.